So you just plant that rock, so to speak.
And they need a lot of them. So essentially, like if you think about it this way, if I'm going to persuade you, that's why I'm saying the Islamic dilemma is not enough.
So there's no rebuttal, you're saying.
I'm not saying there's never anything that they try to say.
Right.
It's also how you do it. Like what we're trying to do is we're trying to present them information. We're not trying to have a full-on conversation as we go through.
This episode is brought to you by our Revo Report Patreon. Join our community to get first access to interviews, Bible study guides, devotionals, and prayer books for adults, youth, families, and marriages. Plus, resources on Christian living, leadership, sermon prep, exclusive Q&As, online Bible studies, and even one-on-one coaching or counseling. Visit patreon.com/VinceRevo and grow in faith and truth with us.
To have a full-on conversation as we go through. Because there's actually a lot of information to share. And for them to understand our argument, we're presenting them a cumulative case. So if we're going to present a cumulative case, we got to get a lot on the table first. Otherwise, they're going to try to nitpick every little thing, and we're never going to get anywhere, okay? And they're not going to see the full picture. What they need to begin to see, and they're never going to see the full picture because this picture is so big, so many huge mountain of problems. I will never have enough time with anybody to go through all the issues, okay? Like I'm developing comparison charts on all the stories and analyzing all the details. So like something I sometimes ask people, so nowadays you've seen some verses in the Quran about that story. Okay, so if you were to imagine, I don't know if I've already asked you this before, so it might ruin it if I have. But if you were to imagine, the Quran has 98 verses on Joseph in the Quran. So almost 100 verses in the narrative. How many differences do you think there would be between 98 verses and Genesis 37 to 50?
How many differences in terms of the story between, in Genesis and the Quran?
Yeah, based on 98 verses in the Quran.
So you just told us, probably a handful, right?
Uh-huh. Those are a handful of big ones.
A dozen, maybe?
Okay, so when I have gone through all the minutiae, I've counted 941.
941,
yeah. Just in Joseph.
Wow.
That's almost 10 a verse.
What kind of differences are these?
All different kinds, all forms of differences, okay? Now, a Muslim might try to harmonize some things here or there. Okay, let's say they take 10% of them.
Right, 100.
Good luck, okay, with the rest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still got 800 to go.
So here's the thing. What started us, the Bible's corrupted? Great. The Bible's corrupted. You think the Bible's corrupted? This is the point we're trying to help help them to see the problem.
Right.
It's not, they can claim that the Bible's corrupted. Now, at first we're going to say, okay, the Quran doesn't say that. And then we're going to mention Dead Sea Scrolls and manuscripts that predate the time of Muhammad. So then we can say, well, actually the manuscript evidence, even in accordance with what the Quran claims about the Torah, the state of the Torah in the time, we have it. Okay, fine. But once they start seeing the differences, they're going to say,
actually, the Quran's corrupted.
No, what is a Muslim going to say? They're going to still say the Torah is corrupted.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if they don't say...
How do you
so this is my point, okay? This is the thing that's being missed in addition to the wrong testament being focused on in the Islamic dilemma. They're stopping at just simply that point, that the Quran says it, but then we find differences. There's so much more you have to do beyond that to actually drive it home and to help them to see the problem. Because the problem is not primarily in the theology. The primary issues are in the narrative. And it's not just Joseph, it's every narrative is like this. Okay? So
interesting. And you're saying from the narrative.
So let's think about this example of the narrative that we're talking about, okay? So let's think about what are they actually having to claim without them realizing it. They are saying the Torah was corrupted. So Genesis was corrupted. The first part of the Torah was corrupted. And originally, what did it say? The way the Quran says it. So that account of Jacob and Joseph and the brothers that we just read about with the dreams, with the plotting, where they were, how old Joseph was, did they have to convince their father or not, were they off tending to the flock, the order of those events, who heard the dream, okay, when they presented the bloody shirt, there's actually so many more things in that passage we just don't have time to look at, right? And how did Jacob react? And then even that consistently through the narrative, he still believes he's alive in the Quran, he still believes he's dead all throughout the Genesis until the end.
Wouldn't they just say there's the differences because that's corrupted, but the
fine. Okay, still fine. Okay, fine. They think it's corrupted, fine. But you have to understand what you're saying. As a Muslim, you're saying it's corrupted specifically in these ways. No more generalities. You have to face all of the specific differences and account for them. And explain to me how this is possible and why. Because remember we said earlier on, what's the motive for the change?
Theological, political, power.
So now apply it. Now apply it.
What would
so
be,
go through the specific details we looked at.
and apply
Is it theological? Is it change in ethical teachings? Is there political motive? Is there anything about prophecies of Muhammad? These are the 4 ones that we go through typically.
Right. And you'll find that there's not.
So
you can't find a motive.
Now you can say, okay, maybe things about differences in the accounts about Jesus, there's a theological difference.
Yes.
Fine, but I don't want to talk about those things.
And that's why you stick with...
We stick with Torah and we focus on narrative details, we say details, not doctrine.
Right.
And now what a Muslim typically will try to say to defend it is to say, well, this is why the Quran is so amazing, because the Quran doesn't talk about all these unnecessary details and information that's in the Bible. The Quran is so beautiful because it just gives us all the information that we need. Anything else that isn't useful, it omits.
And you find that's a typical kind of rebuttal.
Okay, so if they're trying to defend it. Now, some people are so just like, they don't know what to say. Because it's like, so obviously this doesn't make sense. On a scale...
Even geographically, it doesn't make sense.
Geographically, like when are we talking, when are we talking about? Why? We have no motive. Like the Jews are going to change their Torah? What did the Jews think of the Torah? They almost worship it. And they're going to change it? They're going to change, okay, like my friend once, his example was like, imagine if you were to try to convince the Jews today, or you as a Christian even, we're trying to convince the other Christians, let's change one word in the Bible. We're all going to change it. Let's say instead of in the beginning, we're going to say in the very beginning. Are you going to be able to accomplish that?
No.
Nobody's going to agree.
Nobody would, yeah.
And it's not like it doesn't even change any of the teaching.
Right.
So they're not going to do it for that. Are they going to do it for the teaching? How are you? And you got to unify.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Okay. It's impossible. Okay. So this is why we're sticking to corruption. That's great. You think that. But you don't really know the implications of what you're saying and what that really actually means. So we're trying to help them to see all the specific ways that it must have been corrupted if the Islamic narrative is true. And then they've got to defend that. They're not defending a nebulous, abstract concept of corruption, because that's what every Muslim thinks, is they don't know what is corrupted, what it was changed, or when it was changed. They just know it must have been changed because it's not compatible with the Quran. They're not thinking about, who cares about, take Jacob's reaction, okay? He believed that Joseph is alive or believed he's dead, believed the report of the brothers or didn't. Why did the Jews change that?
Motive.
No motive. Could you have done it accidentally by copying the manuscript?
Not 900 of them.
There's no way you could do that, because it's like 4 verses long describing his crying in Genesis. Because you got to think the original version is like the Quran. So Genesis or the Torah originally said it like the Quran. It could be longer, but the point is, it told it that way. So you changed it. It's not like he did not believe him and then they forgot the not when they copied it. He did believe them. Okay, no, they got to add in, and he cried, and he tore his clothes, and his sons and daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, and he said, I'll go down to Sheol, mourning for my son. That's not a slip of the pen.
Right.
Okay? That's if it was changed, which it obviously wasn't. But we got to hypothetically help them think it through. What are they really saying? The Quranic version had to be what the original Torah before it was corrupted said. Okay, that's the same account. Might not be word for word, but it's the same ideas, same narrative that's there. And the Jews changed it to what we have now in Genesis, in all these specific ways. Okay? Why? There's no reason, and there's no manuscript evidence. I'd say, I don't care what time, Hebrew or a translation of it, and in an ancient translation, and geographically, anywhere you go at any time, any part of the world, in any language, it tells it the same way. And it doesn't tell it the way the Quran says it. You could go to the Samaritan Pentateuch, you could go to the, and all of these they're like different religious groups. The Samaritan Pentateuch, the rabbis with the Masoretic text, the Qumran, Essenes, the Josephus, who he doesn't have the Torah, but he writes his own account. He rewrites the story as a history in the Antiquities of the Jews. He's a first century Jewish historian. He's not with the rabbis because he sides with the Romans. Okay, so he's another allegiance. And then you got the Christians, and they got the Greek Septuagint. And then all these translations.
It's all the same.
It's all the same account, except for the Quran.
Wow.
And they don't, like, all of that is, like, it's hard to unpack all of that. But if you think about it, why are we talking about anything else?
Right. And will they ever kind of, in that silence, go to, well, maybe it's so that in the future, something with Jesus and that he's not God, and something with Trinity. And
okay, so
will
they're
they ever kind of try to deflect and go back?
Yeah, they can try to deflect. Typically, they don't really, if you know how to walk through the points that we have kind of a base number of points that we like to walk through to start out, and then we can go on to all different stories if they want to, like, actually face the issues that are there, and they're going to give us time. But typically, they don't try to deflect on that, because also, even if they do, I don't care, because we're not talking about the New Testament. We're starting with the Torah.
Right. So you'll just say, oh, well, we're not.
I'm not defending that. And actually, they get really confused. Sometimes they say, like, "Are you a Christian?" I'm like, I don't care about the New Testament. I only care about the Old Testament right now.